Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About Meh, the YouTube channel where I talk about anything and everything that takes my fancy at the time. Thank you for finding the channel. If you could give me a like and subscribe if you like the content, I would really appreciate it and it helps out. Today we are going to talk about the Resident Evil movie franchise. In particular, the Paul W.S. Anderson and Mila Jovovich ones. I recently bought the Blu-ray collection. I have had the DVDs over the years. These are a long running series. I know they're not exactly held in high regard. But they've been present throughout my teenage years, and I probably had like each movie I can remember at what point in my life I was at. I have memories attached to each one, not necessarily anything to do with the film, just where I was at in my life. I recently bought the Blu-ray collection and I screened them all and I watched them with Corbin because they're not that bad. They're not too gratuitous in any sort of shape or form, and there was nothing too grim. My son Corbin is like really into monsters and zombies and action-orientated things, and I was thinking, what could I find that's not grim, not too disturbing, and suitable? And I thought, you know what, cheese. He needs cheese. B-movie cheese. And I thought Resident Evil. Resident Evil is B-movie cheese. So it was perfect. I hunted down the Blu-ray collection, which I think I ended up getting that for under 20 quid, which is an absolute steal in my opinion. So yeah, let's dive in. We're gonna go straight into a short review of each one. Again, I'm going for short form content, so I won't be going too in depth with this. Try not to prattle too much. Resident Evil 2002. 13 years ago this movie came out. Now I will confess straight away, I saw this movie before it was even released in the UK. I can't remember how, but I ended up getting a bag full of knockoff DVDs, and all I remember is that on the front of these sleeves, covered in Japanese text, and I don't know where they came from. I think it was a cousin of mine, and he had an uncle or something, and obviously they had illegal copies of things, and it ended up in my possession for a short while, and this was in the collection, and I watched it on my really bad Dell computer, and I remember it was very darker than it should have been because obviously it was an illegal copy. I watched it and I fell in love with it. I absolutely fell in love with it. I loved zombie movies and horror movies when I was younger, still do. Resident Evil 2002 was an experience, and watching it again took me right back to it. I love this movie. I love Resident Evil 2002. The look, the tone, the music in particular, the score in it is phenomenal, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. That opening theme that plays through the whole movie is iconic at this stage, I would say. And it's a shame because you can't actually get it on Spotify right now. Most of the scores and soundtracks are on Spotify, but for some reason the Resident Evil 2002 one is not there, so I'm assuming it's a licensing thing. The big one is Marilyn Manson's Seizure of Power, which plays repeatedly throughout the movie, but it plays in such good iconic scenes. I remember when the Umbrella Squad crashed through the windows at the start, and that's when you first hear the song Seizure of Power. It just conveys confusion, anxiety, what the hell's going on. The overall plot of the movie is good, in my opinion. It has a lot of mystery in it, it has memory loss, it has a big twist at the end, which some people could see coming a mile away, but I was a young teenager, I didn't. I love the creatures, I love the lab that it's set in, the hive. It's just good, and the fact that it has a little journey through the hive. You have this sense of the architecture from the train system going into the hive itself, the doors, the manor. I just love this movie. I have so many fond memories of it. And it ends on a cliffhanger, which most of them do. But yeah, Resident Evil 2002 is, in my opinion, a good movie. Ironically, again, take this with a pinch of salt, because I'm not sure how true this information is, but I only found this out recently, a little bit of trivia. Apparently, it's only been in the last couple of years that Paul W.S. Anderson has admitted that this was never supposed to be a Resident Evil movie. Originally, the company bought the rights and they wanted George A. Romero to do the movie, which was, that's well known. His script was constantly rejected because it was too dark, it was too grim. Well, it's a horror movie. And they didn't want that because at the time, video game movies were frowned upon. They were really, I think the only successful video game movie at that point was Mortal Kombat 1995. And then they did the sequel, which has put it right back again. Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Terrible movie. Terrible movie. So George A. Romero's script was refused. Then they ended up getting Paul W.S. Anderson, who recently has admitted that he had a skeleton of a script for a movie called Undead, which then he just adapted Resident Evil themes into it. And he also admitted that he completely based Undead and ripped off Resident Evil 2 and 1. you can see that in it. Resident Evil Apocalypse was directed by someone else called Alexander Witt, but all these Resident Evil movies are written by Paul W.S. Anderson. I think at this point, Mila, the leading lady who plays Alice, married Paul W.S. Anderson, or was in a relationship with Paul W.S. Anderson since the first one. And one factoid that I think is really important that we should all appreciate moving forward is that she designed, or had a heavy hand in designing, all her costumes in each movie. Each one of her costumes in the movie is different, and I think they're pretty iconic, actually, in the sense of, not iconic, but they're very thematic. Like, I can remember what costume was in each movie. Of course, the first movie being the red dress, which was awesome. Second movie being this weird mishmash of 70s flares, a vest top, and as the movie goes on, one leg is missing off of the flares. It's not the best one. Third one being the post-apocalypse Mad Max style brown trench coat, very brown themes, and weird leg suspender clips. Fourth movie being her sort of survival gear because it's set in the city. The fifth movie, which is my favorite costume, was the umbrella gothic tactical corset thing with just a lot of black buckles. It just looked awesome. And the final chapter being the most boring costume, which was kind of like a combination of the third one and fourth one. But yeah, so Resident Evil Apocalypse. I liked the movie when it first came out and I watched it. I enjoyed it. It's the Raccoon City. It's everything that you wanted, because my favorite Resident Evil video game was Resident Evil 2. It was getting the Raccoon City. Nemesis was in it. I remember enjoying it when I watched it initially, and then this time on the rewatch, it's not good. It's not awful. It's definitely not the worst one, but it's not as good. To put so much effort into the practical Nemesis suit, which I think looks good, there's nothing wrong with it, but the fight scenes are edited so badly. Very close up, very choppy, and you can't tell what's going on. Keep that in mind, because I'm going to bring that up again later. Story-wise, it's okay. It begins to mess and try and meld with the video games, and that's a huge problem with this movie series, is when it starts, it didn't want anything to do with the games. It was, no characters were in it from the video games. It was its own thing, which I was okay with. I didn't mind it. I was okay. Then in the second one, Raccoon City, and they put Jill Valentine into it from Resident Evil 3 in particular. I didn't hate it. I did not hate it. The actress that played Jill Valentine in that movie, she was pretty good in it. And she looked exactly like she did in Resident Evil 3. They added some of the Umbrella Squad guys in it as well, but they didn't really resemble their video game counterparts. But when it sticks to just doing its own thing, it's okay, it's good. I don't mind it. But as the movie series moves on, they started throwing in like, oh, this is this favorite character. We've got Ada, we've got Leon, we've got Chris Redfield, we've got Claire. And it really begins to just not stick to whatever its original vision or identity is. It begins to sort of pander toward the fandom. And I think that really hits the movies as they move on. The editing in Resident Evil Apocalypse is terrible. And Nemesis has one of the most ridiculous, stupid deaths ever. He ends up helping Alice at the end, which is fine, and rocket launches a helicopter to save everybody. And then the helicopter that he rocket launches lands on him, and he just looks like an oaf. Like, all credibility of being scary, intimidating, and powerful just goes out the window. It's a very strange choice. Then we go on to Resident Evil Extinction, aka Resident Evil Mad Max, because that is 100% what this movie is ripping off. It went way from the games at this point. The world has ended, which has never happened in the games. It's all deserty, dry, and everyone looks like a Mad Max extra, and there's literally a war rig in it that looks the same as the ones from Mad Max with a fuel tanker on it. Claire Redfield from the video games is introduced into this. I originally did not like this movie, and funnily enough, upon rewatching it, I didn't mind it. I preferred this one over the second one. Alice now has powers, which is a bit strange, but again, as its own cheesy B-movie thing, I don't mind it. But I'll tell you what the coolest thing about Resident Evil Extinction is the villain, Dr. Isaacs. I forget the actor's name. I should have written it down in my notes. Professional as ever, Dave. Dr. Isaacs is so comic book villain, chewing the scenery. Every scene he's in, I love him. Even more so because at the end of the movie, he turns into an abomination, a tyrant, if you will. For anybody that plays the games and knows the original and the PlayStation 1 and the GameCube remake, they know what a tyrant is. And he's prosthetically turned into the tyrant from the first Resident Evil video game, and it's good. We have a fight at the end that takes us back to the iconic, infamous laser corridor from Resident Evil 1. Thematically, outside of the Mad Max stuff, it goes crazy. It's the beginning of crazy for this movie because they start adding in clones. They're cloning Alice, and that's where we get really sci-fi, and it's like instant clones, no explanation as to why we can have fully grown women in what could be minutes. Again, I'm there for the ride. I'm happy to go with it. There's actually, set piece wise, not a lot in Extinction. It's a lot of desert, and then it just like builds to this crescendo of being in a buried by sand Vegas strip, and then ends in a lab fight with the iconic corridor. You can kind of see the, not budget restraints, but you can see it pulling back a bit from like going from big city bombastic to this. Resident Evil Afterlife starts absolutely insane with multiple Alice clones invading another Umbrella Hive underground facility in Tokyo, Japan. Afterlife starts weird, and the overall premise of Afterlife is we go back to another city, LA, in a prison. I love the look of that one. I love the prison is grimy. I like LA. The zombie scenes in this one are excellent. There's like hundreds of thousands outside. There's hordes. They get into the prison. They run through it. I really like Afterlife for those sections, and the fact that they finally put Albert Wesker into the movies. Albert Wesker has a cameo in the third movie, Extinction, over hologram, and he's terrible. He is terrible. It is just doesn't pull it off at all. Wesker should have slick back hair, and he doesn't, and just the guy's just not very good at acting as well. The guy that plays Wesker in this is, by all intents and purposes, right, let's be honest, terrible. But he's supposed to be terrible. Albert Wesker is B-movie cheese to the max. Even in the video games, that his accent. So I really like that Wesker's in this movie. He's in it at the start, and he doesn't come back into it again until the end. And they basically, move for move, recreate the Super Wesker fight from the Resident Evil 5 video game. I love it. And what I love even more is that they do that fight to a remix of A Perfect Circle, and it's so good, and I enjoyed it. Again, the editing is really weird, and the slow-mo, everyone says they hate the slow-mo. I love the slow-mo. Give me more slow-mo. Slow-mo's always cool. And again, cliffhanger ending. Resident Evil 5 is where things really begin to drop off for me upon watching this. Resident Evil 5 was, when I go back to mentioning my past memories of these movies, Resident Evil 5, I remember I wasn't doing well financially. I was in a bad place. It was a lot easier and accessible back then, but I managed to obtain it through different means, you know, the bay. I watched it on my laptop, and I enjoyed it at the time, but now being older and watching it, yeah, this one is just weird. I think they really started kind of going off the deep end with common sense in this one. We have a kind of return to tense horror at the start, but the whole concept of Resident Evil 5 is that it's in a testing lab. And now we've moved on from Alice being a clone to the Umbrella's had cloning technology for ages, and they're cloning entire city blocks in massive biomes of different places of Russia, of Tokyo, and New York. They've been letting out, you know, their tests of zombies and bioweapons and monsters. Yeah, it's just too fantastical. Which is weird because, you know, at this point we've had zombies, monsters, and telekinesis powers and mutations, but for some reason this one just, to me, is just mental. And then they really started shoehorning characters from the games in. We have Leon in it, who's terrible, and Leon at this point is the poster boy of Resident Evil. If you don't have a decent Leon, you're gonna flounder with the fans. Barry, who doesn't look like Barry from the games. On the note of Barry, so when Corbin was watching this with me, and him being young and everything, he even picked up on this. So Barry has a death scene in this, a last stand, if you will, and he sacrifices himself to save the group, and he lights his iconic cigar, and he's got his back against the wall, and then he reaches in and he pulls out this massive magnum, which is his weapon from the original video game. And they have this like surge of music, and Corbin looked at me and went, "Is this supposed to mean something? What's happening?" And I was like, "You're absolutely right." And it kind of shows where the movies were at that point, where they had stopped trying to be its own thing and they're trying to cater to everyone. So people didn't know the video games, have no idea why this is supposed to be a big deal and why we should care. But yet people that play the games are having a little pop and they're like, "Oh, we know that because that's from the thing." But Barry's a non-character in this movie. He's literally introduced into it about halfway through. and he's in just a couple action scenes and then sacrifices himself. I mean, it's a cool scene. It doesn't mean anything when people don't have any connection to it. It ends with a wild cliffhanger, kind of integrating characters from the first movie. And that was the other thing actually I should mention as well in Resident Evil Retribution, is that they bring back actors that were in the 2002 movie. Michelle Rodriguez as Rain, the commander of the Umbrella Squad, Carlos from the second and third movies, but they're back as clones and they have hardly any dialogue. The big return character, or was supposed to be the big return character in number 5, was Jill Valentine, who wasn't seen since Resident Evil 2, and that was a long time ago. Jill Valentine in Resident Evil 2 is okay. She's good. I have no issues with it. I think she's an awesome Jill Valentine. She looks like Jill Valentine and she acted like it, and I had no issue. Here's my big issue. She's awful in Resident Evil 5. She is one of the worst in it. Her acting in it is terrible. Her action movements are terrible. It's really bad and it's really awkward, and I don't know what was going on there. So much so that she wasn't asked back for number 6. That's quite telling to me, that she's admitted as well that she wasn't asked back. And there was a situation with Resident Evil 6, there's many situations with Resident Evil 6, but I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, she wasn't asked back. Wasn't a scheduling conflict, wasn't an issue with something, that she just wasn't asked, and I can see why. It's so bad. Her performance is really bad. I'm sorry, I feel like crap on her, but it was awful. Resident Evil 5 ended in a big twist climax where Wesker's gathered all the remaining heroes to Washington DC, and it's the final stand against the mutation. It's the last bastion of humanity, and the Red Queen is now all of a sudden the main villain. The Red Queen is the computer AI from the first Resident Evil movie, but now she's like the big bad and she's been wiping out humanity. And then at this point, there's been so many retcons of the story, and then it ended. And I'm like, okay, I remember watching that and I was like, I'm game for that, I'm game for that. And I had to wait 4 years for Resident Evil, the final chapter. And I'm waiting for this big Washington DC battle. And I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be good. Resident Evil, the final chapter starts. The battle has happened and we got to see nothing. That's already really bad. Like, I think that's insulting your audience a little bit and not delivering on promises. Then through some dialogue and exposition, we find out that Wesker, who had gathered the heroes, had actually betrayed them, and the whole thing was just a trap, and now everybody's dead except Alice. On top of that, all the characters from Resident Evil 5 are dead, basically. Resident Evil 5's entire plot line was that Alice finds a little girl who is also a clone, which is weird, and then has a motherly connection to her. Spends the entire movie trying to protect her and save her, and she even says, I'm your mother now. She is not in number 6. She is never mentioned. Alice never mentions her. Bleh. The final chapter, story-wise, is redonkulous. I can't even go into how ridiculous it is. It has some really cool set pieces with a skyscraper that drowns fire on hundreds of thousands of zombies. It has cool set pieces on these rolling tanks. It returns to the hive, which is a big letdown because you don't actually see any of the original sets bar the laser corridor. It's a letdown of the movie. It's so bad. They bring back Dr. Isaacs, who's now a religious fanatic. Then it turns out halfway through the movie you realise that Dr. Isaacs is a clone. So the one that Alice killed in Resident Evil 3 is a clone. The one she meets at the start of this movie, it turns out, is a clone. The real Dr. Isaacs is sitting underneath the hive in vampire cryogenic looking coffins. It turns out the big twist from all the movies is that Alice is also a clone. Even though we have seen multiple clones of Alice, she herself is a clone. It tries to tie it all together. It's messy. It sucks. None of the characters get decent send-offs. It ends with the virus just like, oh, by the way, underneath the hive originally started, there is a cure, a massive cure that can be airborne and fix all of this. And it's bad. It's so bad. Mila in particular, who's quite enthusiastic through all the movies and carries them to an extent with her action set pieces and costumes. She seems tired in this, like really tired. For being at this stage, her and her husband's vehicle, like she seems really tired in this one. Like she just doesn't want to do it. The action in it is not good. She doesn't get many fight scenes. The fight scenes themselves are nowhere near as bombastic as the other ones. I think there was a lot going on behind the scenes with this movie, which I'll go into in a wee bit. Now, my biggest complaint with Resident Evil: The Final Chapter is I think the only thing that was really keeping me invested from 3 onwards was Wesker. Albert Wesker, who's a badass, mutated super soldier with dragon's eyes. He can do backflips, he eats people, he can dodge bullets because he's so fast. In the previous movies, he's had his head blown open, he's been shot multiple times, stabbed, he was blown up, he managed to escape. He's invincible. He is a cheesy comic book villain that just cannot die. Do you want to know how Wesker dies in final chapter? Albert Wesker dies from a door. A door comes down and lands not on him, doesn't bifurcate him, doesn't cut him in half, it doesn't crush him, it doesn't decapitate him, no, it cuts his foot off and he dies like a bitch. Yeah, they done my boy dirty, but it's a bad movie, it's bad. Even Corvin who was really enjoying them up until this point, was like, nah. It's a shame it ends on such a flat note because these movies went for so long. When you look at the timeline of it, they do progressively get worse as they go on. There was a lot in the final chapter that I can understand that caused issues. So first of all, not an issue, just a timing thing. Mila ended up becoming pregnant with her second child, so that delayed production. No problem. Hey, awesome. Babies. But as the film was going on, scheduling issues, so a lot of the characters that were supposed to return didn't return. Ada Wong was supposed to return from number 5. I think Leon, all the heroes that survived at 5 were supposed to return, and because of the delay, they didn't due to scheduling conflicts. Also, a stunt person on a motorcycle had to do a shot where they were driving towards a camera crane without a helmet on because the shot required it. They crashed into the crane and put their arm up to protect themselves, and the list of injuries is horrific. It was so bad that a bone in her arm was ripped out, fingers were ripped off, tendons were pulled out, nerves were ripped, internal injuries, neck injuries, orbital bone completely shattered, top of the skull completely shattered. Hate this term. The actual medical term, I don't know why, it gives me the bulk more than actually describing what happened. The stunt person's face was degloved. Degloved. Basically, lip up and over. Apparently Mila and Paul visited in a hospital. I don't know if it was regularly, but they made sure that the stunt person was okay. But then in compensation, this stunt person who lost their arm as well, obviously, amongst other things. I mean, this is life-changing injuries that I could not fathom. I couldn't fathom it. I mean, the level of disfigurement and everything, mental, physical anguish, emotional, this is something that just doesn't go away. And I don't think stunt performers get enough credit. I'm glad that this year they've just started now in the Oscars, which is bullshit anyway. But the Oscars now give an award for stunt person category. I don't think stunt people get enough credit for what they do. They put their bodies on the line to entertain, similar to the professional wrestling that I perform in. It's just a weird thing. It's just always like, oh yeah, stunt performer, stunt performer. In fact, the only time you ever hear somebody talk about stunt performers these days is if you're talking about Tom Cruise doing his own bloody stunts, or if you're complaining about a stunt shot where you're like, oh, you can see the stunt person's face, that's not the actor. That sucks. Like, they're still doing the stunt. It's still a person doing the stunt. Yeah, so apparently they visited her and then she was offered $33,000 in compensation. Not surprisingly, she took the company to court and won big, rightfully so. Also, a Humvee, which is a very, very large military vehicle, was on a rotating platform. It fell off and it crushed a crew member, killing them. It's almost as if this production was cursed. And I think there's a strong possibility that it limped to the finish line. It's hard to watch this movie as well because the editing is so choppy. Going back to what I mentioned in Resident Evil Apocalypse with the fight with Nemesis, how it's so close in, it's so choppy, there's like a cut every half a second and you can't tell what's going on. This is worse. Every fight in it is like that. I actually started to feel sick. My eyes were beginning to hurt because I couldn't focus on it. So yeah, the final chapter was a massive, massive letdown. The music in some of these movies is really, really good. Resident Evil Retribution has one song that they have 3 versions of it play through the movie, and quite rightfully so, because it adds so much to it. I believe it's called Falling Through the Air. It plays in the opening, which is in completely in reverse, which is really, really clever. There have been more Resident Evil movies. There's some really good CGI animated ones, which a lot of the game fandom love. I think a couple of them are okay. I don't think they're amazing. I'm old school Resident Evil. I like In the Mansion. I like in the police department. I'm really excited for Resident Evil 9, the video game, because it goes back to Raccoon City. The other movies, or movie of this, so there is another movie which I think I might do a separate video on because I haven't watched it again. I think I still own it. I may have actually tossed the DVD out. I was so mad. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. It's not good. The only thing I can say positively about that movie, which I absolutely loved, is there is a scene in the mansion which looks like the mansion from the original video game, and it is so terrifying. That's the only thing I can say good about it. There is a Netflix series of Resident Evil. Go to hell! I watched it in 2 sittings, and both sittings were agony. It is awful. I don't know who that was for. Again, you take source material and you deviated it, try to make your own thing, and then in the middle you try to connect it to the original game storyline, and it's awful. And it has clones in it again. Stop with the clones. Please, just ground Resident Evil in monsters, viral weaponry, and calm it down. Have 1 or 2 superhuman folk that the virus bonds with. Wesker. But just calm it down. Now, I am excited because there is a new Resident Evil movie coming out in 2026. I think it's October 2026. It has been in development hell. They're promising that it's going to be more grounded, that it's going to be more horror-based. Skeptical, because they just can't seem to get it right. I'm really curious to have seen what could have been if we had the original George A. Romero script, because I feel that Resident Evil is rife to be grounded. Yes, the video games are absolutely batshit crazy now, but they did a similar thing where they went too far. Resident Evil 6 went too bombastic, the video game, and it's not very well liked. And then they grounded it down with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Phenomenal game. One of the best, if not the best opening in a horror video game ever. Mia terrifies me. And of course, Resident Evil 8 is just fantastic as well. Looking forward to the video game. So that's been a messy, unplanned ramble about these movies. I loved watching these with Corbin. I had great fun watching through these. Yes, it's a bit of a slog before I got to the end. I will probably never, ever watch 4, 5, and 6 again. But Resident Evil 1, I think it stands the test of time. It still stands as a good, cheesy-ish B-movie. It's still the only one out of the entire 6 that I would class as a horror movie. There's a survival element. It's genuinely quite jump scary at times. The special effects, even for back then, the CGI was a bit dodge, but if you can get past that, I still think Resident Evil 2002 is a good movie, and it stands on its own. Thanks for sitting with me. The usual YouTube bullshit. Like, subscribe, share. It really helps me out trying to build this. If you want to get in contact with me, look in the description, because I'm not going through it every time now. Lower my workload. Thanks for listening. Catch you later. Peace.